In this video, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of running one by on gravel. So if you haven't been living under a rock recently, you know that Campy has just released a 1x13 gravel group set called Ekar. Now, this will be interesting because a lot of people are going to hate it, and one by is about as divisive as American politics. Let's jump into it and see if it's something you really want or need. All right, so here we are with the one by versus two by, pros and cons. The first con of the one by setup is it cannot match the range or close gear gaps of a two by system. So let's jump into this. As you see here, I have a chart of three different options. The first one is the Stockies SRAM modification 1x13. Also, you have the next one is a Campy Ekar 1x13, and then you have the Sram AXS Force Wide, which is more of a recent release. If you look here at all three of them, you can see they all have pretty good ranges. You have 420% here, 467%, and then you have a whopping 516% here for the AXS Wide. Now, one thing to notice about the AXS Wide and why 2x is kind of interesting is you have overlapping gears. Okay, so you see all these gears here in the yellow box. They are the overlapping gears of these gears here. So when you go to count this, what you're going to do is you're going to count the number of gears you have. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So you have 15 usable gears when it comes to the SRAM AXS Wide. Now obviously Campy and the stocky setup, you have 13. One of the big negatives I see with the Campy is some really big jumps up here at the large end of the cassette. You have a 19, 20, and 20%. Usually, for me, I really don't like to go over 15%. But you can see here you have some large jumps. But if you are going to have large jumps, usually you're going to want them at the larger end of the cassette because it's when you're going to be climbing, you're going to be going slow. You do not want large jumps at the smaller end of the cassette here. So up here on the stocky setup, you can see these are really tight here, the 10 through 13, really good. You do have a 15% jump here to the 15 tooth. But for the most part, this is a little bit closer gear ratio compared to the Campy setup. Now looking down at the AXS Wide, it's very interesting to see this. All of the jumps here, you have really the largest jump you have is a 17%, and that's going to be down here, between these gears. But 17%, that's the biggest jump. A lot of them are much lower than that. Some of them even in the single digits as far as percentage-wise. So right now, ultimately, when it comes straight to gear ratio, the AXS Wide is going to win. Now here it is with the AXS Eagle 1x12, which a lot of people use on gravel. The big downside of this, you get tremendous range, which is 500%. Still not as much as the wide setup, but still a ton of range, especially for a 1x setup. The problem, you have huge jumps. You can see this 10 to 12 tooth, that's 20% jump. This is the jump here that I absolutely hated when I was running 1x11 in the past. It was just unusable, really, So huge jump here, and then you also have 17% here. And once again, this is not where you want your jumps. You don't want your huge jumps here at the small end of the cassette. Now going to the Shimano GRX 2x11, once again with this group set, it does have pretty good range. It has 479%, so it is more than the other two options. Now, with this one, though, you don't have as close gear ratio as the SRAM Wide. You can see it goes from 11 to a 13 tooth here. So you get an 18% and a 15% jump. So there's some pretty good jumps right here at the lower end. Everywhere else is pretty close, And also, too, when you look at this setup, I believe it has more usable gears than, say, the wide. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So you have 16 usable gears when it comes to the GRX 2x11. Okay, so the next con of a 1x system is friction. All right, so if you look at VeloNews here, you have the friction differences between 1x and 2x drivetrains, and they did a whole test here with ceramic speed based out of Colorado, and came up with how much wattage you're losing when it comes to the 1x versus 2x setup. Now they were comparing road setups, so as you can see, really everywhere the 2x system is less wattage than the 1x system. only if, you know, if you're running like your small chainring with some pretty small cogs in the rear, that's where the friction gets a little higher. But for the most part, if you shift up to your 53 chainring here, you know, you're going to be under it. So really you know, you can see on average, you know, it's roughly about 2 watts here, and then as you get up to here, you can see the small cogs. You're going to have a lot more drag than you are with, you know, 11 tooth here. But if you look at it, it's, you know, what is this? It's taking about 13 watts roughly, or about 12.5 watts, and that's up to about, you know, 18 and some change. So you're looking at about 6 watts more power loss going with that setup there. So now the one thing I see about Campy and the big negative, it goes down to a 9 tooth. So, you know, this chart's going to continue on even further up here with a 9 tooth on it. My guess is with a 9 tooth, it's probably going to be another, you know, 2 watts is what you're going to lose. So it could be up to 8 watts you're losing compared to 11 tooth here. And that's just because it's the way the chain bends. When your chain is bending to wrap around a cog, it causes more friction, and it causes you to require more power. Now, this is the results, and then as you see here, this is basically saying that, you know, overall with everything, the average wattage that you are losing with a 1x system to a 2x system is going to be about 3 watts, which is not much. Okay, so it's only a 3 watt difference. The big differences come when you get down to those really small cogs at the end of the cassette, and, you know, it's causing that chain to wrap around that you know, cog, and it's really causing a lot of friction. That's where you see the biggest changes. Another thing that they claim on this is aerodynamic advantage of using a front, or not using a front derailleur with a 1x system. They say at 30 miles an hour you save about 3 watts. But I don't know many people running, you know, 30 miles an hour consistently. And you know, on gravel you may hit it on a downhill occasionally, but I really don't know how true that is, and if it really is going to have an impact with gravel. All right, so let's talk about the pros of the 1x system. And the first one is just simplicity. You have less moving parts. With less moving parts, it means you have less maintenance. You have less things to go wrong, so to speak. So that is one thing that a lot of people like about 1x, and they feel like it's worth it, even though there is a negative with the friction. Now, the second one, and in my opinion, this is going to be the biggest pro of a 1x setup, but yet we're not seeing it yet. And that is more possibilities with frame design. So let's get into that. So what you can do here is you can have shorter chain stays, you can have larger tire clearance, also more mud clearance. You also allow for a narrower Q factor with your pedals, and it also allows more frame material to be built around the bottom bracket to really stiffen up the power transfer of your bike. So we have really a fight for limited space here around the chain stays. So you have your chain ring, you have your chain stay, you have your tire, and you have your front derailleur, all competing for this valuable space right here. And you can see this maker, this is actually a titanium frame. You can see they kind of made the chain stay here. They made it flat to try to make room for this. And this is an issue because you have all of this stuff here trying to get into this position right here. So with a 1x setup, you can actually you know, get around this. Now, we've seen many companies come out with some pretty interesting ideas, and their ideas have been around for years, but you've seen the drop chain stay. This is an open wide gravel bike, and you see this chain stay here just dropped really low. Instead of the chain stay going straight through right there, you can see that this gives room for those larger tires and also the chain ring. So that's why you have the drop chain stay. Some companies like this Allied Able gravel bike, they raised the chain stay, all right, and they just took it out completely and put it above everything. So you can see right here this space, there's tons of space now with this bike in this area. You don't have the chain stay running straight back, and the tire and the chain rings and everything is not competing for the space that's right here. So when you go with a 1x, you free up some space. That's one of the advantages of that. Now, the reason why you want to free up some space here is chain stay length. Chain stay length, as far as in my opinion with gravel bikes and cyclocross bikes, they just seem so dated to me. They're very, very long. Mountain biking has gone 1x, for a while now, and they also have boost. So they have their rear wheels a little wider. They pushed the chain ring out a little bit more to allow them to have shorter chain stays. But it's crazy to me to think that this Marin Rift Zone mountain bike that has 125 millimeter of travel has just the same length chainstay as a Santa Cruz Stigmata gravel bike. And you know, it's really because we're trying to cram in everything in this little area right here with the front derailleur and the narrower Q-factor crankset, and obviously we're not running boost to push everything out. So you know, it's just, to me, it's interesting to see that we have these long chainstays on these gravel bikes and cyclocross bikes. Now, it also a benefit of having a shorter chainstay, you also can increase your front center. So whenever you increase your front center, what you're doing is you're putting the front wheel further out in front of the rider, and that gives you a ton of stability when you're descending downhill on a gravel, you know, rough gravel road. Now, this was actually a crazy setup I did years ago, and this just shows you really how short you can make chainstays when it comes to tire clearance. Now, this is a Salsa wood smoke, which is actually a flat bar mountain bike. And what I did with it was I took it and turned it into a drop bar gravel bike, monster cross type bike. And the chainstay length on this is crazy short. It's 400 millimeter. And obviously it has this huge raised chainstay here. So it's 400 millimeter. These tires, this is 29 by 2.3. And you know, if you're able to get a chain length down to 400 millimeter with a 2.3 mountain bike tire, I'm pretty sure you could probably get that short with a gravel tire, you know, if you designed it properly. And now that it's one by specific, there's room there to do that. So I think we're going to start seeing some designs in the future that are one by only. All right, so really the benefits that come with a one by system, they can't reach its full potential yet because bikes obviously aren't designed around one by only yet. So, you know, if you go one by, there's a few advantages as far as simplicity, a little bit of weight maybe for some of them, but really where we're going to see the main advantages of one by is frame design, like we've talked about, and we've seen it in mountain biking as well. So it's going to be interesting how the gravel industry will shift closer to what the mountain bike industry will be doing. What do you guys think about that? Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, if they will go that route or not. And it should be interesting, but as far as a pure gear range and friction, one by cannot compete with a two by system. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, share it with any of your friends, and leave a comment down below what you think about one by and if it's a waste of time or not. And we'll see you in the next video.